Kelly Robinson. It's nice to see most of you again. I'm recognizing names and faces and screenshots of people that I've been meeting with, but if we haven't had an opportunity to meet yet, I am an assistant director in the Center for Career Development and also serve as the pre-law advisor. And probably that component, given what we're talking about today, would be of most interest to you. So if we haven't had a chance to talk yet about your plans for law school, either next year or beyond, certainly hop on to Handshake at some point and schedule an appointment with me, because I'd love to chat with you about that. But tonight we are specifically going to be talking about a topic that I'm having a lot of conversations with students these days with regard to LSAT prep. We are joined by David Staples, who is a Kaplan instructor in many of the different standardized tests, including the LSAT. He's been with Kaplan for about 7 years. And so David is going to be leading us in our discussion today. Just a few housekeeping items before I get started, before David gets started. As you're joining, which I'm recognizing, I think most of you are kind of used to this, if you could mute and put your video on stop just to help us with the bandwidth, since we are expecting a larger group tonight, that would be awesome. I've put into the chat feature a Google Doc that if you could just click on it just to go quickly and sign in. This is kind of replacing the scanning of your card that we would be doing if we were all gathered on campus in person. So I would appreciate you doing that so that anyone who's here tonight, I can send you follow-up information. I am recording this session, so if for whatever reason you do have to hop off early, I will be emailing this out, and we will be having it out on our social media channels from the Center for Career Development, so look for that as well. The format tonight, David's going to be sharing his screen and talking about all sorts of tips and strategies with regard to the LSAT. We'll have some time at the end, about 15 to 20 minutes, to ask questions. What I would ask is if you can put your questions into the chat feature. I'm going to be collecting those, and I will ask those questions at the end of David's presentation. If I don't happen to get to your question, I will definitely be able to ask any questions I'm not able to get to of David and get that information out to you. Okay, David, I think that's all that I have. If you want to go and take it away, I'm going to take myself off of stop video so you can kind of have the floor.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody tonight. And we were supposed to have done this, back in March, I think the 17th or something like that. And we had to cancel because of our little friend that is floating around. And so I'm excited that we were able to still do this and get together. I'd lived down in Columbia, South Carolina. My wife is a pediatric pulmonologist down here, so we are familiar with the higher level learning and all of the challenges that go along with that. I do work at Kaplan. I teach online. I've taught in person, and do a lot of stuff with high school students, college students, working on helping them get where they want to go. I know one of the big questions, one of the big things is like, what is going on with the test, and especially in light of all of the weirdness that is happening in our world. And so we have some answers for you tonight. Hopefully that will help you out as we go through those. Not all the answers, obviously, because I don't think even LSAC knows all of the answers, but we're going to try to help you out as much as we can. The presentation, if you want to screenshot anything, if you want to take notes, perfectly fine, please do that. There's going to be some good tips that we're going to go over and everything. Our agenda, we're in the middle of the welcome. And then we're going to talk some about like what the test means and like all of, how it's going to look. We're going to go over some strategies, give you some ideas on how you can improve your standing on the test and all of that. So here we go. So traditional law school admission timeline, just for you to have an idea of what you should be looking at and when. If you're planning on starting in, this would be talking about August of 21, this would be your starting off right here at the beginning of our timeline, and you'd be in great shape. If you're hoping to get in August of 20, you can you're probably going to need to rethink some of that. But if you're thinking of August 21, you can start now and start figuring out where you want to go, study, take the LSAT, all of those things. And so if you want to grab a shot of that, the timeline, to make sure that you kind of see when you should be doing everything. Right now, we're still in good shape. The LSAT, it's not going to hurt you. The fact that they've been shuffled around, even if they continue to get shuffled around, you're still going to be in good shape as far as that goes. And you still have time to get ready for it. And that's a really good thing to know. So the traditional LSAT format, this is the traditional format right here. And it's going to be 2 logical reasoning sections, 1 reading comp section, 1 logic games section, an experimental, and then the writing sample has now moved to an at-home test. So there were some major changes last year, and I'm not sure how much you all knew about the format beforehand or how it's changed, but there were some big alterations, mostly the fact that it has gone digital. And so we're going to look at all of that tonight, though, just to make sure you know what you're getting into. So this is the traditional format, but everything changes when COVID-19 comes to town. So this is the new format. This is what is being given in May. So this was supposed to be the April test, got canceled. This is the May test. As you can see, things have changed. There is they got rid of one of the logical reasoning sections. We have the reading comp still the same. We have the logic games the same. The experimental section got ditched. Writing sample is still being administered at home. So they're going to be using remote proctors and also artificial intelligence and everything. They're recording all of the test takers. It's supposed to be as accessible as possible for the most people possible. So it's not just a PC test or a Mac test. They're supposed to let everyone know Friday, like all of the final details for the May offering. June, July, I know that that's a concern because some of you guys have probably signed up for those. There's no answer. College Board, and if we're looking at like precedent, College Board announced today that they're canceling the June test and all the SAT subject tests. And their plan is to offer SATs every month, August through December. So is LSAT going to follow suit? We don't know. It really depends on when they feel student safety is, that's their main concern. And when can they guarantee that that's going to happen? So the thing to know is that they have come up with this flex format. They are using it in May. So if they have to use it in June and if they have to use it in July, then they already are prepared to do that. It is still scored the same. It is still being seen as a legitimate admission test. Colleges are still, law schools are still going to be looking at it as a viable option. There will be a note on the scores saying that it was the flex test, but it's not a penalty for you. So if you have any of those concerns, like that this is a junior Jedi test and that no one's going to take it seriously, throughout all of their announcements, they have said that that's not the case, that this is going to be seen as just as valid as every other test. So that's what we know for right now as far as this next offering.
Can I just hop on here really quick, David? And I promise this is the only time that I will do this. Just to let students know that I was on a webinar call today with LSAC, and law school admissions deans were on there. And just to reiterate, what David has been saying, that they recognize that this is an unusual time. The LSAT is not being tossed out the window, but they recognize kind of the nuance of the situation. This will be a valid exam that they will be incorporating into your application, just as they would otherwise on a non-pandemic academic year. It's just one portion of the application. So the basic motto was prepare for it as you would if it's any other test. So if we find ourselves in this LSAT flex situation going into later in the summer, don't be freaked out by it. So, okay, that's all.
No, that's awesome to hear. I mean, because that, I mean, directly from them to hear that. But again, yeah, there's still so much that we don't know. But the nice thing is that you can practice this, and what they're suggesting is you practice exactly the same as you were before. Prep the same way, because they're going to be the same exact questions, the same exact types, the only thing they're doing is reducing the number of sections. So that is going to be the way the test looks right now. If I had a guess, I would guess that the June test is in jeopardy. But I think that they probably will put the flex test out there. So, but again, I don't work for them. So now as far as scoring goes, this is something to be aware of, how the scores are distributed. Every standardized test follows this bell curve type thing where they are going to distribute out so that they have a set number of 120s and a set number of 180s. And this is been it for forever. They tweak it year to year, like a little bit here and there, maybe a point or something like that. It's not a massive overhaul every year between percentages. But the really cool thing is that you can make a giant jump with not a giant amount of question change. I mean, if you look at the raw score on that third column right there, I mean, look and see, you can make a jump up by just getting a couple of questions different. If you set a goal in your mind of, I'm going to get 18 per section instead of 16. I mean, you can see yourself jump 10%. And so this test, possibly more than any other work, is going to make a huge difference. This is one of those ones where doing it over and over and over again is just one of the best ways to prepare. That's one of the neat things, is that all of the old tests are out. And so you can go through and just go over test types and question types over and over again. If you're not great at logic games, if that's not your strong suit, just keep on doing them, and you can test over and over. I'm serious, like 80 tests worth, and you can just go through and keep on practicing. And so and you will get better. And it's one of those things, and this is something I try to teach my students, and it's something that Kaplan really believes, and that's this growth mindset, where we tell you, don't pigeonhole yourself. Some people are like, man, I suck at logic games, and it's like, that you've defined yourself. You've already said, I'm not good at this, and it's like, you're not good at it yet. That's what you got to tell yourself. I'm not there yet. I will get there, but I'm a work in progress. And as long as you can see things that way, you can rise above where you are right now. I've seen it done. I've seen students that are in tougher educational situations than you. For several years when I lived in Houston, we did LSAT tutoring for Saudi nationals who would come over, and there would be people working in the oil industry in Saudi Arabia, and they would be changing careers to go into law. And we would sit there with them for several weeks going over these things with them, where all they did all day were these LSAT tests and practices. And we would see them jump and make huge jumps. And these are people who, like, the reading comp wasn't just, oh, I don't like reading comp. It's like, I don't understand some of the words, some of the sentence constructions in this. And we still would be able to help them to get where they're going. And so having that growth mindset, the practicing, the work will pay off. That's something you've got to go into this with, that kind of thought. So I want to show you how each of the sections look on the digital version, as you can see, they're not a whole lot different than the paper version. And so if you have, older tests and you're worried about how are they going to, transfer over, how are they going to translate, there's not a whole lot of difference. It looks exactly the same. Actually, there's some tools on here that I think make it better. You can gray out answers. You can, like if you know that something's not right, you can click it to where you've eliminated it. You have multiple highlighting options. It's actually in some ways kind of neat. Plus, you also don't have to bubble in and worry that you didn't bubble it in enough or that you bubbled it in too much. And then when you go to erase it, you're like, tearing your paper and all. You don't have to do any of that. It's just if you change it, you go click, click, and that's it. And so logical reasoning, this is how it would look on test day. Logic games, as you see, same kind of thing. The difference between what the paper version and the digital version is, they will give you scratch paper. You can't bring paper in. You couldn't bring paper in. You never were allowed, and you still aren't. But they give you scratch paper, and they give you a writing utensil, writing implement, and you can draw your sketches and all your deductions and everything on those pages. So you still want to be practicing with a paper and pencil because that is still going to be a part of your test. But again, the actual punching things in, eliminating all of that is going to be done on the screen. Also notice down at the bottom, it's kind of cool. You can flag things. You can mark which ones down here. You can see which ones you've done and which ones you haven't. And so I think in some ways it's kind of an improvement. It's just benefiting us in the long run. Reading comp. This is one where you got to do some adjustments as far as your scrolling and things like that. But once you do that, then you'll be fine. Just don't forget that you can scroll and that there's more further down. But it's like you can still scroll to where the part that you're actually reading and dealing with is right next to the question. And so that's, again, a benefit to you. So that's how it's going to look. If you are familiar with paper tests, it's not going to be a major change. You still can get used to the whole process by practicing on paper tests. All right, so let me give you, I want to give you some test taking strategies, and we have this up so that you can take a screenshot, you can write this down, whatever way. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you some basic strategies for the whole test. And then I'm going to give you some strategies for each of the sections as well. Okay, and that's going to like be the bulk of what we do the rest of the time while I'm yapping at you. So this is for the test in general. First point, pick the right answer. Now I know that's kind of dumb. No, seriously. This was I was like, this is a pretty obvious thing. I want to select the correct answer. But you do want to make sure that you remember to actually click it, I guess is what they're trying to get at with this. Don't pick wrong answers. That's not how your score improves. But also don't leave things blank. You just fill in where you need to. Don't like avoid, and like say, well, I'm not going to try that. There's nothing you should not try. There's nothing you should not mark. This gray down elimination button, that is a very powerful tool in the hand of any test taker. When you can eliminate things, every time you do that, you're going to give yourself a better shot to get things right. You will be like Katniss and have the odds in your favor at the more eliminations that you're able to do. And so I love the fact that that's a button on the digital test, because then it encourages you to actually do it. And I try when I'm like going through, because I take these tests too, when I'm working with people, I've taken, dozens of these to like get ready, and I always eliminate, because it helps you when you're sitting there going from 4 answers to 3 answers, and then from 3 to 2. Now it's like, oh, it's a 50-50 shot. This flagging questions, I think on electronically, we're a little more willing to do this on paper than on paper tests, because like on paper tests, we're like, oh, I don't want to put a dot on my answer sheet, or what if I forget and don't go back? Well, on the electronic one, you have that running counter at the bottom, so you can see exactly what you need to go back to. And so if there is something that you are not confident about, if there's something that you want to, if you have extra time to go back and look at, flag it. There is a huge tool that we want you to have in your test aid toolkit, and this is going to be called Triage. And we use this. This is like one of our like foundational things that we tell people in every test that we teach. And if you've ever watched Grey's Anatomy or ER or Code Black or The Resident or House or any of those things, which all are, by the way, 100% accurate when it comes to whether or not they're just like real life. You probably have heard the term triage, and hopefully you've never been to an ER, but if you have, you know what that is. I've been several times because I'm a klutz. And the thing is most of the time when I go, I'm not the first person they look at, because I'm sitting there with a busted toe or a busted ankle, and they're going to deal with a person with, you know, the axe in their neck or whatever. And so they deal with the more significant issues first. When we're taking the test, we're not like that. We're like one of those like shady hospitals where it's really just about turning over patients. Like, that's how we approach the test, is we're like, I want to get as many points as I can. I want to see as many patients as I can. I want to code as many things as I can. And so we're going to deal with like the easiest stuff first. Because the thing is, every question is worth the same. And so it's not like when you send your score that the dude at Princeton's going to be like, oh my word, Anderson only answered the easy questions. They don't care. They just want to see what score you got. And so if you can get to that score by getting all the easy things done, then do it. And so like on each section, you should be triaging. You should say, which game am I doing first? When you get to like logical reasoning, you're like, I can't stand parallel flaw, and don't do them. Do them at the end. And so that's where that flag is going to come in really beneficial to you, is so that you can skip things and come back to it when it's worth it to you. And then some of this stuff, it's like you think it's a no-brainer until you're actually taking the test. Like, you're allowed to have highlighters. Like when it was paper version, you could have highlighters. Well, now on the digital, you saw they had 3 highlighters up top. Use them. You know, it's like you have 3 colors. So come up with what each one represents to you. So maybe you're going to use yellow anytime a question says except, or anytime it says not, or something like that. You're going to highlight it with yellow. Anytime you're dealing with, you know, keywords or something like that, you're going to use pink. Come up with, you actually have 4 things at your disposal. You've got a regular pen for your stylus. You've got 3 highlighters. Then you have your paper and your pen on the desk. And so you utilize all of those. Think about, how can I do this to maximize my benefit? You don't highlight everything. I don't know if you've ever done that, you know, like in school, you're like, I'm going to highlight the important stuff. And then there's like 8 words that you didn't highlight. You're like, maybe I should have done it the other way. And so don't just highlight everything for highlighting's sake, but definitely utilize those tools and come up with some definition of what each one means. Keep on doing the paper and pencil test practice. It doesn't hurt you. You're still going to have to use the scratch paper. And you bubbling in on paper and pencil is not any different than you clicking on the digital. And so if that's what you have at your disposal, if you have a book with tests in it or whatever, that's still fine. You still need to keep practicing that way. Formal logic. Formal logic can be a straight up nightmare. Like, I'm sure if you've done any practice, you are aware of that by now. You have scratch paper. Don't just use it for your sketches for your logic games. If you're dealing with a logical reasoning question and it involves formal logic, write it out. Use your scratch paper and write that out. That's what it's there for. I don't know, and I trust me. After working with as many students as I have, I've seen it so many times where students just are like, they don't write their stuff down. They don't write their work out. They try to remember it all in their head. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? There's no benefit to that. Again, they're not going to look at your scratch paper and be like, I can't believe Amanda took so many notes. What kind of person is that? I mean, you've all seen legal dramas. What do they do the whole time? They're writing notes, right? You know? So it's not like they're going to penalize you for that. So use your paper. Write things down. This non-consensus thing, what this means is like we've, talked to a ton of students that have done these different things and asked them, does this help you? And there's not been a consensus about some of these things. Some people find them helpful, some people don't. And so you don't need to worry about, oh, I better turn my timer off, or, oh, I better turn my timer on. You have the luxury of changing some of this stuff. The highlighting and the underlining tools, I told you to use them, but there are people who are like, you know what, it's actually more confusing to me. Fine. If that doesn't help you, then don't use it. But at least give it a shot. Play with the options and see, can I, does the font, do I do better if it's larger, if it's smaller? Do I do better if the things are further apart? The brightness, that's the nice thing is you can change all of that. But there's not a set standard that you need to do. So if you do hear somebody saying that, well, except for me, I obviously you should listen to. But like if other people are saying, oh, you've got to turn your timer off, that's not necessarily true. So, all right, logical reasoning. To me, I think my personal logical reasoning is my toughest topic because it is so easy to get into quicksand. Stealing straight up from John Mulaney's comedy routine, I totally thought quicksand would be a bigger deal, like when I was growing up. But there's quicksand on the test in the LR section for darn sure. And it's so easy to get caught in it. And there's these mental games we play with ourselves where we're like in the first 10 questions and we're like, I need to get all of these. And then like you hit number 9 and it's just a nightmare for some reason for you. And you're like, I should get this. This is in the first 10. I shouldn't start having problems until 14 and stuff like that. And then we like force ourselves to deal with it because otherwise we're an idiot and stuff like that. That's not smart. Don't do that. Because it is quicksand. You can find yourself wasting 5-10 minutes on a single problem. You've got to be willing to walk away. You've got to be willing to do all kinds of crazy stuff. So this working backwards thing, I don't know if you've tried this or heard about this, but like the questions get harder as you go along. But then they drop off a little bit. And so what we'll have students will do is they'll jump to the back. Like they'll do the first however many they feel comfortable doing. And then like they'll hop to the back and start coming backwards through the section because they find it that those back few are easier than the 10 or so in front of it. And so don't be afraid to do that kind of stuff, especially on the electronic test where you can just hop and you don't have to have such a worry that I'm going to miss a page or something like that. So don't be afraid to go backwards and work your way through those tougher questions in a different order. give yourself the best opportunities to succeed. As you're practicing the LR questions, see which ones are the easiest for you. See which ones you like are better at, and make sure you get those. If you want to go through first and say, I'm really good at assumption questions, and then just grab every single assumption question, do all those before you do anything else, that's fine. Who's to say that you're not allowed to do that? You want to get the most points possible. You want to give yourself the best chance to succeed. So you want to start to notice some things like finding the patterns. The parallel reasoning, parallel flaw questions, we put this one on here because this is something you can use that scratch paper for. You can mark down, because when we're talking about like those parallel things, it has to be like every step matches. And so sometimes you'll have like this is okay, this is wrong for this reason, this is okay, this is okay, this is wrong for that reason. And you have to match that exactly. And so you spot what the pattern is in the original and you write it down, and then you can go through the questions, each one of those, and see which pattern matches. And so that's a way that you can like deal with those particular questions in a better fashion. This right here, guys and gals, people, humans, inference questions. Inference questions are like the great equalizer on every test. They can take your knees out. I don't care if you're like normally buzzing around the 170s or if you're normally buzzing around the 120s. Inference questions can floor you because we forget this one thing. An inference question has the level of truth must be true. The answer choice that I am coming up with must be true. And so you think about, is it going to be easier for something to be must be true if it's super specific or if it's general? And so you think about that, and it's like, probably general. You know, if all I have to do is prove that the animal was a bird versus that it was a red-bellied woodpecker, it's easier to say it's a bird. Like I could just look and some animal goes by the window and I'm like, well, that's either a bird or someone threw a cat, you know? That I can come up with that. And it must be true that it was a bird. But for me to be able to identify that specific bird, and so when you're dealing with inference questions, the answer choices are frequently going to be very general. Things that are extreme, things that are super specific are going to be really hard to prove. Also, bringing in outside information to help us make that choice also causes lots of problems because, you know, you're not supposed to bring outside information in. And so the problem is that if you're reading something and you have any knowledge about that topic at all, you're bringing in your biases, you're bringing in your knowledge base, and that's going to give you an issue as far as picking the right answer because you're adding to what can be proven. So inference questions and they're, by the way, they're very, very common. They've increased in number over the last few years. And so making sure that you have that must be true level of proof, it really makes a huge difference. Some students find writing the question type down super helpful, some don't. Some students find marking up all over the place in the question, the stimulus, super helpful, others don't. And so figure out what is your jam, like what do you like doing, and then stick with that, okay? Don't be afraid to mark things up if that helps you. Logic games. No. Now, I love logic games, but most students are like, yeah, I can't stand these. And it takes a while because it's not the way that most people have thought. They don't normally do this kind of stuff. What you'll start to notice, though, is that as you do these things more, you start being annoying. You know, like you'll watch commercials and be like, oh, I see the flaw in that one. It's like you start to apply that to everything. It's really fun when you listen to like political speeches and debates, and you're like, there's no logic here at all. So you get to learn it. For again, triaging the games. Excuse me. We're not telling you to sit there and look at every game in depth, but like go through and say, you know, oh wow, that's a hybrid loose sequencing game. That's not going to be fun at all. And then like say, I'm doing that last, and figure out which ones you get the fastest, which ones that you pick up easier. And then order them. Say, okay, I'm going to go 1, 3, 2, 4. You know, that's the order I'm going to approach these, and do them in that order. Do the same thing with questions. Within those games, individual questions are going to take longer than others. For example, the first question on every single game is an acceptability question. You don't even have to start your sketch to get that question right. Even if you decide that you're only doing 3 games because that 4th one is just like too much for you to get in there in the right amount of time, you still can answer the first question for that 4th game, because all you have to do is look at the rules and then see which answer choice matches the rules. And again, elimination. It's actually not which choice matches the rules as much as eliminating all the choices that don't match the rules and then picking the one that's left. And so acceptability questions, you should get all of those. That should be one of your goals, is that I'm going to get every single acceptability question right, because that is just an understood thing I need to do. But there's going to be some games, and I mean, some questions within a game, like where you have to change the rules, which means that you now have to change your sketches. Obviously, that's going to take longer than just trying to do a straight sequencing. And so do the questions in the order that you should be doing them. Just because a question comes 3rd or 2nd in a game doesn't mean it should be done 3rd or 2nd in a game. The better your sketch is, the better your score is. That's one thing to really start to practice, is how can I be efficient at my sketches? How do I take that extra 30 seconds or a minute to go through and make deductions and try to make connections that maybe aren't as clear. You had a great sketch. So try to make that a skill. Really practice at that. So like as you're doing things, and hopefully as you're working with us and looking at like the LSAT channel and stuff, really focus on how the teachers are paying it, how they're setting up their games, so you can start to mimic them. Same thing, the level of truth. Some people really find that beneficial. I find it beneficial to go through and write off to the side what level of truth. Must be true, must be false, could be true. And there's a big difference between those things, because if you have it written down, you can see it, like just for you to go, oh, okay, now I remember that's the level of truth. And that's all part of your sketch. That's all part of your scratch paper. Then reading comp. Oh, reading comp, it's been on every test since you were in kindergarten and taking those tests and like having to remember what the dog's name was and everything. Reading comp, why still on here? The big thing with reading comp, again, triaging, what passage am I doing first? Do the one that you like, There's a law one, and then there's one on humanities, which I joke around a lot of times with my students. There's one on Chinese poetry, which is the humanities one, because there's like multiple tests where there's one on Chinese poetry, and you're just like, oh, I don't know anything about that. Well, don't do that one first then. Do that one last. And definitely do the passages in the order of what you like the most. Big ideas, not details. Now, I don't want you to ignore the details and then like, I'm never going back to look at them at all. The big thing is I want to know what the big ideas are. I want to know the outline of what each paragraph is about so that I know where to go to get those detailed questions. I'm not going to ignore them. I'm not going to try to remember them. I'm going to be like, hey, when they ask me about, you know, how many people were in this particular mob, I can go back to the paragraph where the mob was described and find that answer. I don't need to tote that around with me. I just need to know that the mob was described in paragraph 3. And so that's what we're talking about, is smarter, like prepping, being smarter with what you're doing, toting fewer details and things around with you, because your brain really can't do that. And so just know where to go, know what the big ideas are. You know they're going to ask you certain things. This is a standardized test. It has to stay the same. There's only so many questions they can ask about reading comp. Which of the following will the author agree with? What is the purpose of the passage? What is the main idea? You know that all of those are going to be questions. Anytime they start giving you an in-depth example, there's questions coming out of that in-depth example. If they give you a list of like 4 things, that's a question later on. You know that. If the author is spouting an opinion or spouting somebody else's opinion that he's going to just destroy in about 2 minutes, you need to know that, because there's going to be a question on that. And so you start to realize these are the things they always ask about. So I'm going to start looking for those things, because then I have a leg up on all of those other yahoos that are taking the test that did not do those things. Wrong answers are a lot of times things that may be true, but maybe it's not what the author was saying. And so we're like, hey, wait a minute. The fact is this. Yeah, but they're asking what the author said, not the same thing. Sometimes they'll give us something that sounds really close, but isn't. And we have to be able to differentiate between that. So those are some tips for reading comp. Now, as far as like how far in advance you need to start to prep, it depends on you. It depends how much time you have. It depends on what kind of studying you prefer. We have people who can do this in a month. We have people who take 3 months. It really depends on how much time you can devote to it and how well you study, what way you study. And so one of the things I've been telling a lot of students is, as annoying as having these tests shuffled around is, you got extra time. You know, if you were supposed to take the April test, now you have until May. You have a whole extra month that you can prepare. And so take advantage of that. You know, if you find yourself with more free time, don't sit there and say, I'm going to read about Joe Exotic and, you know, that's going to benefit me. No, spend that time doing LSAT Exotic and then figuring that out instead. So practice is going to be the key, and you want to make sure you do that as much as possible. How do you study for it in a month if you are taking the May one? What do you do? Balance. Don't burn out. Make sure you give yourself a day that you're not prepping. Make sure that you know what the most tested things are, the things that pop up the most often, and target those so that you're trying to get the maximum number of points. Remember our huge word we talked about, yet. You're not there yet, but you're going to get there. You're going to get closer and closer. Don't just do LR all the time. Break it up. Split them up and make sure you're doing everything. That you are doing things you're good at, because you need that encouragement that, hey, I am at least winning this. Because then there's a lot of ones that you aren't. And then you're sitting there going, oh, I'm just going to focus on those. Then you're just going to get down. So make sure you are practicing the things that you are good at, okay? And then this super exciting thing, James, I see he is here. We have this awesome partnership with Davidson. And so I was going to have James talk about that and to win you over to his way of thinking. His accent is exotic. It's awesome. I can't wait till you hear it. He's like the best.
Thanks, David. Hope everyone's doing well and can understand what I'm saying. And I love the Joe Exotic. I haven't yet watched anything about this Tiger King, so I'm probably the only person who doesn't know what's going on there. So, but I know I've got to check it out. So, thanks to you, David, for running this event, and thanks, Kelly, for hosting it. So I wanted just to quickly run through this slide for you. My information is at the bottom of the slide. It's my email address. You are more than welcome to reach out if you have any questions at all about anything in the LSAT course. David, I'm not sure how much you might have covered around that, but I can certainly just give a brief overview. Some of these links here, the first bit.ly link that you see does take you to our live online schedules, and then you can play around on the website to see what are the bits and pieces that are included in the course. Just a basic overview. Our LSAT course, and as Dave already mentioned, it's been around for many, many years and gone through a few iterations around, we've had psychometricians, learning scientists go through our material to make sure that we are doing the best thing we can do around, getting you ready for the exam, getting you the material in the right way so that you can, harness it and take it to test day. And we've just gone through a bit of a revamp as well with the test going digital, and things that go with that. So we've been fortunate enough to be in that live online game for a while. So we haven't had to make many, if any, drastic changes to our course to run with that. So the good thing about the partnership with Davidson, and this is really built off of our partnership on the pre-health side. So we've already got a partnership running that we've been doing for the last year and a half on the pre-health side. So Kelly's been awesome around adopting this as well for you folks. So as you can see here, the discount's fairly significant around the monetary value that you can save. So $780 for the live online course, due to the COVID-19. We aren't running at the moment any in-person classes just for the nature of that. But when we can get back to some kind of normalcy and when we can do that again, the price point for in-person is that $840. So the $780 is what is the live online price point at the moment. There's the link to enroll. So Kelly is, go to her with any kind of, she'll have information around, making payment. You'll make payment to Davidson directly. So Kelly's the person to see about that. And she'll have some more information around deadlines and when she wants to roll this out. And, we've got May, we've got some summer test dates, and there's the LSAT Flex that I know David mentioned as well. So there are test dates happening, and we want to make sure that we're getting you guys prepared for that if you choose to do this. And just going back to the course, I know I sort of went off track a little bit. The course is 8 sessions of teaching time. There are every single released LSAT official test available to you as well. So if you feel like taking 80 tests, which is not going to happen, but you have the option of taking, whether you're comfortable doing just a handful, whether you need to do 10. You have the option to do as many as you feel you need. We have a lot of tools that help you. Not only, obviously, you've got folks like David in the class helping you through each lesson, each core session, and then you've got outside the classroom is where you get a lot of the biggest bang for the buck around personalization. So we have tools that help you navigate what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, where you need to go in the suite of resources that we have in the online space so that you can, work effectively and efficiently to your strengths and to your weaknesses. The LSAT channel, it's like Netflix, but for the LSAT, it's live and on demand. So you have the ability to watch your live lesson, your core lesson, and then, log into the channel and watch additional supplemental lessons around whatever particular topic that you need to focus on. And like I said, all of the books come with it. There's all the online quizzes, practice tests, so you can help to master the material, help to get test day realistic experience around full lengths, and sort of build your game plan for test day. And the teachers will work with you and help you figure out your path to getting that score that you really need, whether you're starting in the 150s or 140s, or if you're starting at a 170 and want to get a 175. I mean, the tools are there to help you with your particular personalized need. So I'll just pause there for a moment, and David, if you can just swing back to the slide with all the Davidson discount info on it, just so folks can see that one. But